everyone. Welcome to Professional Practices for Artists, Art 4342. In this course, we are going to focus on generating a set of documents to help you apply for opportunities in the arts, whether that be a job or an exhibition or anything else you can think of, possibly a grant. The culmination of the class will be to submit all of these documents that we produce for an actual exhibition, and I'll give you a resource list for that during that assignment. But that'll be your final assignment in the class, is to submit your documents for an actual open call for an exhibition. So you want to be an artist, huh? I had a teacher once who said, only be an artist if you have to. And I think that's kind of true. We're either wired for it or we are not. And people who pursue art are usually very, very much wired that way and passionate about it. So for our course, we're going to focus on job application materials first in the first module, and that will take up 10% of your grade. And during that module, we will generate a job description just to show you where to look for jobs, a cover letter that is tailored for a specific type of job, a CV, which is actually different than a resume. I see that says resume on there. And a sample of your work, and we're going to go over how to present that for an application packet. And later, we will generate an artist statement. So that's actually not going to take place in the first module. But these will all be typed and submitted via Canvas. The next module will be about exhibition proposals. And in each module, we will begin with a lecture, and we will close with a guest speaker, which will be a recorded guest speaker, and you will submit a discussion post about that. So in the exhibition proposal, we will talk about finding an audience, pricing your work, technical descriptions of your work, and how to court or engage a gallery, which is ultimately the goal of an exhibition, and hopefully representation within a gallery, which is a business arrangement between you and a gallery where they sell your work and you basically go be an artist and make artwork. The third module will cover website and presentation methods, portfolio presentation methods. So online would be via a portfolio website, and physical would be like a zine or a pamphlet or a printed portfolio for a review session. We'll talk more about that when we get there. And that will then transition into our final module, which will be about juried exhibitions and how to submit to them and how to keep yourself updated and up to date with a current resume. Typically, you want to have, if you're shooting for an academic job, you want to have 5 to 7 shows on your resume per year. And your participation grade will consist of written oral speaker questions or responses to in a discussion post at the end of a module, and posts or comments regarding the lecture at the beginning of a module. So, anybody ever heard the myth of the starving artist? Well, that was kind of made popular by this guy, Nadar, in 1855, and he kind of epitomized the myth of the starving artist and having to live in very shabby conditions and only focus on your work and have no other relationships. Well, that's just not true in today's world. Art is a business, and the only difference between a traditional business model and art is that you are the commodity. You are the sole focus of the business. So For our very, very first assignment, you're going to address these questions in a discussion post, which is now published. And you want to address what your goals are, and if you have any that you know of that are specific, like a credential you want to achieve, or a gallery show you want to have with a certain gallery, or a great way to generate ideas about this is to look at other people's resumes, which are typically posted on artists' websites, and also make a projection about where you'd like to see yourself 5 years from now. Is that going to be a balance between a day job and an art practice? Are you going to make your art practice your central focus? And if that's the case, how do you do that? Is it through teaching that allows you time? Is it through gallery representation? And how do you navigate your personal life to protect your time so that you can make art? And that is probably the hardest part of it, honestly, is how do you generate a schedule that will be conducive for being productive, and how do you communicate that to your friends and loved ones to make sure that everybody is supportive of your time and need to make art. So here are some job titles and roles in the art world. It's, believe it or not, really important to know the language and lingo surrounding your profession. It's how the profession targets certain interests, areas, and skill sets, and it's important. It's kind of a moving target, but it's important for you to keep up with the language that is used for your specific interests within the art world. And that said, if you start to meet certain people within the art world that you know are sympathetic to your work, it's a good idea to keep up with them and follow where it is that they are working so that they might give you opportunities. But some of these roles and job titles include art handler and preparator, registrar at a museum, production of art media like photographing artwork or generating commercial photography or videos. You can be a curator within the art world. And the important thing to think about in all of these is, one, where does your interest lie, but also what are the time commitments for each of these, and where do you position yourself? You can also position yourself as an advocate for arts and not necessarily make art. So there's lots of options. The art world is not a monolith of either you make art or you don't. There's a place for everything. So if you're interested in teaching, here's kind of the lay of the land there. There are different ranks within the academic institution. There are fellowships. You can be an instructor, an adjunct, which is kind of a part-time teacher. You can be a one-year sabbatical replacement person. You can be a maternity leave replacement. You can be a lecturer, which is typically a 2-year appointment. You can be a research fellow, somebody who only does research or makes art. You can be a visiting assistant professor. You can be an assistant and associate professor, or you can be a faculty member, a staff member as a lab manager, or teach half the time and work a staff position half the time. Sometimes people comically refer to that as staffalty. It's not a real term, but people say things like that. There are different types of schools that you can work at. There are Tier 1 research universities, Tier 2, and the differences here are the teaching demands and time demands at each university. So if you're at an R1 or a Tier 1 research university and you are somebody who only does research, you never see a classroom. There are other people who teach what's called a 4-4 load, and that's 4 classes in the fall, 4 classes in the spring, and teacher universities tend to be more that way. Community colleges are more teaching-centric. Universities are larger, colleges are smaller, and job postings typically become available from September through November in the academic world, and then they're due again in October and January, and then there's a second round, and they process that through July and August. So without doubt, the most important thing to acknowledge and realize is that your art practice is different from your art career, but they do overlap. And the most important thing is developing a daily routine and a ritual around your art practice and your art career. So how do you kind of separate those things? It's sort of like your job and your passion. One of the things makes you money. One of the things is what you protect because you love. So it's important to devote time to each. So sometimes you're in the studio, sometimes you're looking for places to show your work or job venues. So these are issues that you might come up, might be wrestling with or asking yourself about with regard to this work-passion balance. How do you devote yourself to meaningful work while still earning a living? This is an issue for all of us. Is it better to work a little bit each day or binge on the weekends, say? Is it better to devote yourself wholly to a project or just partially and let it go on for a long time? You are going to sacrifice something when you get busy. It's just a question of what are you going to be. And it's just important that you know when you do get busy that you understand which sacrifices you can make and you're willing to make. Are you willing to not accept as much money? Are you willing to sacrifice your sleep and work longer hours? Are you willing to not be as put together around the house and have a messy house for a little while? It's just important. It's going to happen. It's just important to understand that you're making a decision to do that because of your circumstances. This is an example of a calendar that I create for myself to protect my studio time. I tend to work better in the morning and do a little bit in the morning and then go to work and then work a little bit in the evening. This is an overview of some very famous artists' routines. My favorite is Kermit Oliver, who is a painter from Texas and is the only American artist to have ever been commissioned to create artwork for Hermès. He created scarves for Hermès, but he was a postman at the Waco mail office for something like 45 years and went on beyond retirement and kept his schedule. He didn't drive, and the reason he did this was the consistency of his schedule allowed him to be a very productive painter. He worked the night shift at the Waco mail office, and they had great benefits there, so he didn't have to worry about health insurance. He had got a consistent paycheck, and his wife would drop him off at work in the evening, and then he would get home in the morning and paint for several hours. This is some of Kermit Oliver's work. He's from Refugio, Texas. He's possibly most well known for this painting, which is a mural over the altar of Trinity Episcopal Church in Houston, Texas. It is a portrayal of his son, who was executed on death row as the risen Christ. These are some of his scarves that he designed for Hermès. So he'd work overnight at the post office, come home, paint a little bit, take a 2 or 3 hour nap, and start the whole cycle over again. He did this for decades. W.H. Auden lived from 1907 to 1973. Some of his famous works included 1948, The Age of Anxiety, Funeral Blues, The Shield of Achilles, and For the Time Being. He has a quote. He says, "Routine is in an intelligent man is a sign of ambition." And so his routine was he would wake up at 6 a.m. and from 6 to 7 he ate breakfast and did a crossword puzzle. From 7 to 11:30 a.m. he would write. And from 11:30 to 12:30 he ate lunch. And then from 12:30 to 6:30 he would write again. And from 6:30 to 8:30 he had cocktails and dinner. Francis Bacon is the English painter. He lived from 1909 to 1992. These are some of his works. This is his studio, and the other, which brings us to the point that finding space to create artwork is also an issue. Whether you have a studio or a rented studio or a room in your house or a closet or a friend who will let you do it, make art in their house, it's important to find space, and a space that inspires you. This is Francis Bacon's studio. It looks like a wreck, but his house was neat as a pin. He called his studio the idea machine because when he walked in, he could pick up a photograph that was stuck to something and get inspired by it, or stumble into something and spontaneously become inspired. So he would wake up at 6 a.m. and for 1 hour eat breakfast, then from 7 to noon paint, and from 12:30 a.m. the next day he would party in corrals. So he was kind of a night owl, did not sleep very much. Strange. Henri Matisse, 1869 to 1954. So Matisse would wake up at 9 a.m. and then from 9 to noon he had his first sitting for painting, and then at noon he'd have lunch, and from noon to 2 he would nap, and from 2 he'd sit down and paint again. Joan Miro, 1893 to 1983. It's a painter. He was absolutely a stickler for routine. Woke up at 6 a.m. for 1 hour ate breakfast, and from 7 to noon paint, 1 to 2 exercise, 2 to 3 had social time and writing letters, 3 to 8 paint, 8 o'clock dinner, and 9 o'clock read and go to bed. Haruki Murakami, 1949 to present. He's a novelist. These are some of his books. So he would wake up at 4 a.m., write, from 1 to 2 p.m. exercise, 2 to 3 social time and writing letters, 8 o'clock dinner, and 9 o'clock read and go to bed. So you notice up there, he used to smoke 60 cigarettes a day while running a jazz club. That's crazy. Toni Morrison, who I'm read used to rent a motel room for herself so that she could go right there. These are some of her books. She would wake up at 5 a.m. and until 9 a.m. she would write and watch the light come up. And 1 to 2 exercise, 2 to 3 social time, write letters, 8 o'clock dinner, 9 o'clock go to bed. Chuck Close is a painter and dabbled in photography. Woke up at 6 a.m. and then until 9 a.m. wrote and watched the sun come up. 1 to 2 p.m. exercise, 2 to 4 social time and correspondence, 8 o'clock dinner, 9 o'clock go to bed. So if you need to, do not hesitate to reach out and have a one-on-one meeting with you, to get a one-on-one meeting with me about any of your assignments or credentials. I'm here to help. I look forward to talking to all of you, and good luck this semester.